Hi, I'm Matt and welcome to Tech Tested. How much test bench can you get for $25? Let's find out. So today we're going to be taking a look at an open air test bench I bought for $25 off of Amazon. Now there doesn't seem to be any sort of branding on it, but we'll leave a link down in the description in case you decide you want to pick one of these up. Now the model I picked up actually supports only M-ATX and Micro ATX motherboards. There are larger and smaller versions, but I felt this one was the sweet spot and I do a lot of testing on Micro ATX systems, so this seemed about perfect for me. Now, I realize most of you probably have no use for a test bench. On your initial setup of your computer, using the cardboard box to test your components is going to be more than enough. However, I get the impression a lot of you also like to test systems other than your primary system, and this is a big upgrade over the aforementioned cardboard box. Your typical motherboard box obviously has the advantage of being free with your motherboard, but it also has the disadvantage of not having any mounting holes. Furthermore, installing a GPU over and over again in a system that doesn't have any support for the graphics cards could eventually damage either the graphics card or the motherboard. So without further ado, let's get into the unboxing and see what we got for our $25. Okay, before we get to the unboxing, I want to give you a little bit of perspective of how it compares to your typical motherboard cardboard box. So this is a box you would get a typical full-size motherboard in, and as you can see, there's nothing in it. Still, this is a good size comparison for you, and now I'm going to show you the packaging for our test bench. So this is the packaging it came in, and as you can see, it's pretty basic. It did come in a box with some other components, but this is what I was working with after I pulled it out of that box. I don't know what yours will come in other than this particular packaging, so without further ado, let's get into the unboxing. Or unbagging, I guess. We have a cardboard box, and if we turn it over, we do have a flap here in which you can open it up. So pulling out, test bench, okay. All right, so this is kind of nice to see. So we did get some instructions with our test bench, as you can see. I don't know if that's right side up or if this is right side up, but anyway, it does come with some very basic instructions, and it doesn't really need more than this because it doesn't have that many parts. So as you can see here, this is our test bench. Some things to keep in mind, it's not cardboard. I know it looks like it's cardboard, but it's actually plastic. If you look here, you can see that this cardboard actually peels off. So, let's go ahead and do that. That's like the most satisfying part of a PC build, isn't it? All right, we got a little bit sticking here that we can hopefully get off as well. Also, I don't know if you can see this, but it also does seem to have some branding here. It says QDIY. I don't know if that's the manufacturer or not, but either way, here is your test bench. Now, in theory, you could leave it like this, leave the cardboard on the back, and in fact, you could probably just leave the cardboard on the front. So for now, that's what we're going to do. Let's get back into our box and see what kind of hardware we have available. So it comes actually very well packaged, even labeling the bags, which is really nice. I really like to see that, so we know exactly what we're working with. And these four larger rods are actually your GPU stands. So let's follow the instructions and see what we can do. Let's see if I can find a screwdriver. Probably should have got that already. Always make sure you have your trusty screwdriver. These Q3s. Oh, I actually really like this design quite a bit. So upon further review, if you want to pull the cardboard off at any point, it's best to do it first or leave it on for good. I kind of like the clear aesthetic, so we're going to pull the back off, and I'll show you why in a moment. right, I've got some fingerprints on it. That's not good. Anyway, this is your setup, and the reason you're gonna wanna do that is you need to take these Q3 screws. They come in the bag that says Q3, and you need to slide them through here. Slide them through various holes as listed on the instructions so you can mount your Q2 standoffs. So these will just screw on like so. So as you can see, this makes actually quite an aggressive standoff that's actually quite deep, and I really, really like that. The advantage to that is it gives you spacing on the back of your motherboard in case you have any sort of mounting bracket for an aftermarket cooler. So let's get through mounting the rest of them. Now, another thing I want to note that I really like about this, and you may not be able to see it on the camera, but it does have optional mounting holes for various different sizes. As you can see, there's one here and here. You don't need to use them all, and in fact, the instructions instruct skipping the two that are really close together here, but it's really nice to see that you have that option should you want to use it. The other thing you want to make sure is that the branding is facing up. As you can see, the GPUs will mount in these holes back here. You may not be able to see them on the camera, but you want to make sure that it's not upside down like this, because if you mount it upside down, everything's going to be backwards and none of the mounting is going to work properly. Next, we're going to move on to installing the GPU standoffs. Now, these install much the same way. You have screws that come through and screw on. So now we have all four of them installed. Now, unfortunately, they don't all seem to be straight. As you can see, they're quite crooked from one another. So that might be an issue, but overall, it's at least nice to have those brackets. So we have the test bench mostly built. There are washers and thumb screws that go over top of the GPU mounts here. And I suggest installing any ones you don't intend to use before you build your system in order to prevent losing them. So now our test bench is mostly built, and I have to say I'm very pleased with the results, but we can't really test it until we build a PC. So let me get some components. Here is a small motherboard, and the mounting holes seem to line up quite perfectly. Now, obviously this is a smaller form factor and doesn't utilize the whole motherboard. And as you can see right now here, it would be advantageous for us to move this mounting bracket to right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that quickly. All right, let's test fit our system again. And there we go. All the holes seem to line up quite well, which is very nice. So I'm gonna go ahead and install all of our mounting screws. All right, as you can see, our motherboard is on there and it is quite sturdy, very, very impressive. And it does leave quite a big gap under here that I can even slide my fat fingers partially underneath. So next we will be installing the graphics card, which is almost as big as the motherboard itself. So let's see how it handles a absolutely massive HD 5870. So we ran into a bit of a problem. It seems like the threads on this particular standoff are cross-threaded and are not in good shape. Still, one of them seems to be holding up the GPU just fine, and you could always move one of these other brackets over here in order to make it work. Now, one of the major disadvantages to this setup is you don't have a power supply mount. So in this particular instance, you're going to have to take your power supply and just set it nearby. Still, that doesn't seem to be much of an issue since you can get it so close to the system. And there you have it. Our system is set up minus the graphics card. This power supply does not have two PCI Express power connectors. It only has one. So we are going to forego that for now. But overall, I'm actually very happy with the build quality minus this one GPU standoff that does seem to be cross-threaded. So what are my thoughts on this test bench? Well, for the price of $24, it's actually really convenient for somebody that does a lot of tinkering with computer components. Unfortunately, we did have a manufacturing defect in which the mount for the GPU seemed to be cross-threaded and would not allow any of the nuts to hold down the GPU. It also does have the disadvantage of having nowhere to mount a power supply or a hard drive, which means those components are just going to be sitting open on your desk and not tied down in any way. For $25, I don't think it's a bad deal, especially if you have a use for a test bench like this and don't want to spend a ton of money on one of the more expensive options. I mean, those things can get really expensive, upwards of like $200 to $300 for the top of the line models. Keep in mind, they also have options for micro ATX and regular ATX motherboards in case that fit your needs better. This just happened to be what fit my needs best. Another potentially great use for a test bench like this, if you're into DIY, might be putting some brackets on it to mount it vertically, and you can slide in the power supply and hard drive behind the system tray, and you could have a really cool exposed system look. In fact, that might be what I intend to do with it. If that's something you guys want to see, please let me know down in the comments. Overall, the build quality is actually quite excellent, minus that one manufacturing defect on that GPU bracket. That was rather unfortunate, but otherwise it feels extremely sturdy, and I was expecting something very flimsy. If you want to test to see how actually sturdy this thing seems to be, one moment. I'm not afraid to do this. Like, it's really sturdy. I'm really happy with it. As always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, follow us on our social media platforms, and check out our Discord and our website so you can pick yourself up some tech tested merch.